Districts of the village Zolotarivka, Luhansk region. 2 Russian armored personnel carriers with infantry advanced toward Ukrainian positions for an offensive operation. One of the armored personnel carriers hit a mine. It is clearly visible how the rags and pieces of metal from the armored personnel carrier were blown apart, and the Russian infantry had to disembark in an emergency and look for an ambush site. The Russian infantry are running toward the tree line, trying to take cover before the arrival of Ukrainian kamikaze drones. The other armored personnel carrier continued to move, but Ukrainian kamikaze drone pilots had already taken off after it. After being hit by a kamikaze drone, the Russian armored personnel carrier stops and decides to turn around and move in the other direction. Other Ukrainian kamikaze drones are already approaching and ready to strike. While the Russian infantry, who had disembarked from the first destroyed armored personnel carrier, were searching for an ambush position, Ukrainian kamikaze drone operators also targeted them. The Russian occupiers tried to hide between trees, in trenches and dugouts, but they were constantly watched by a reconnaissance drone. Kamikaze drone pilots also continued to do their job and locate Russian infantrymen. Here, Russian soldiers managed to shoot down a drone with an assault rifle. A reconnaissance drone spotted 3 other Russian soldiers hiding in a trench. The Russians sitting in the trench are in no hurry to provide first aid to their comrade. Instead, they continue reloading their rifle magazines. No other Russian soldiers are visible. These Russian soldiers are not trying to change their location, even though they know that Ukrainian pilots know where they are hiding. And here is a personalized Russian T-80 Rodnoy tank. Ukrainian pilots of kamikaze drones began attacking it to destroy it. After 2 hits, the tank begins to smoke, then catches fire and burns down. The Russian offensive failed, the attempted attack was repelled. Another assault, but this time in the Kursk region. The Russians, using tanks and armored personnel carriers, attempted to break through to Ukrainian positions. In response, Ukrainian kamikaze drone operators and artillery forces launched an attack on the Russian vehicle column. During the assault, the Russians began to abandon their armored vehicles and fled to the forest to hide from the kamikaze drones. This tank and armored personnel carrier managed to break through the shelling, but not for long. Kamikaze drones and artillery continued to strike them. This is where the artillery hits an armored personnel carrier and a tank, and they start to stop. When the tank came to a complete stop, the kamikaze drone pilots continued to strike. Some tanks had already been neutralized, but there were still some that continued to move. Therefore, the Ukrainian military continued to attack the enemy equipment. Ukrainian troops successfully repel Russian offensive. Here is the Russian offensive in the Kharkiv region with 2 armored personnel carriers and 1 tank. One armored personnel carrier was disabled by a shot from a handheld anti-tank grenade launcher. Another armored personnel carrier continued its movement. The hit armored personnel carrier stalled and began to disembark infantry. A Ukrainian kamikaze drone flew to the same location to finally destroy the hit armored personnel carrier. The second armored personnel carrier also began to disembark infantry and then immediately began to retreat. A kamikaze drone caught up with it and hit it. After the second hit, the armored personnel carrier lost control and was abandoned by the Russian military. Then the bomber drones arrived and started clearing the tree line. That's all for today, friends. Subscribe to the channel to not miss new videos. This material was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.